Fire TV 6 and Amazon Fire TV 6 and on ZingoTV on Chromecast and all smart TVs 2016 forward. Please remember to download the Barnburner and ZingoTV apps in their respective app stores. Both are free on both iOS and Android devices. So it's been a really busy week in the National Women's Hockey League. I mean, really, we've certainly seen quite a lot from small business partners to signings to rumors to bubble prep. So let's get you right through it. And then at 2:45, I have Ant Tokarski from the icegarden.com who will join me for an NWHL season preview. So let's get into it. We're going to start with some bigger news that's now a little bit old, but because I never really touched on it, we're going to get right into that for starters. So that being said, with the help and guidance from USA Hockey, the NWHL's upcoming season will have an all-female officiating staff. So going to the NWHL.zone now, let's get right into that. The press release from the USA Hockey looks like this. With the help and guidance from USA Hockey, the NWHL's upcoming season will have an all-female officiating staff. The league's regular season contest, as well as the 2021 Isabel Cup playoffs, will be staged at the iconic Herb Brooks Arena in Lake Placid, New York, from January 23rd to February 5th, 2021. The 10 officials selected to the NWHL officiating staff include Sarah Buckner from Crystal, Minnesota, Erica Greening from Romeoville, Illinois, Kendall Hanley from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Alicia Hanrahan, St. Paul, Minnesota, Jacqueline Howard, Gaithersburg, MD. And then you've got Jamie Huntley Park, and she's from California. Then you've got Jackie Spresser from Thornton, Colorado, Amanda Tassoni from Bradford, RI, and that's Rhode Island, Mackenzie Welter from Rome, New York, and Laura White from Runnymede, New Jersey. In his statement from Matt Leaf, the director of USA Hockey's officiating education program, he said, "We're appreciative of the partnership that has been formed with the NWHL in an effort to promote and develop our female officials. The officials that have been selected are highly skilled, motivated, and team-oriented officials who are up for the challenges that will be critical to the successes of the NWHL season. They are the brightest and best of our current and future top-level female officials who bring a balance of experience, versatility, loyalty, and an unmatched skill and a passion to be the best they can be each time they step on the ice." The participation of this officiating crew in the NWHL season is a milestone for pro hockey. While the league has had an all-female officiating crews work games before, there's never been an all-female officiating initiative of this scale. In a statement from Michelle Picard, the Deputy Commissioner of the National Women's Hockey League, she said, "I am thrilled with the officiating staff that we have assembled for the NWHL's sixth season. Then, in working with Matt Leaf and USA Hockey, we've identified 10 of the most highly qualified officials from across the country. We are looking forward to having this group's expertise, enthusiasm, and professionalism in Lake Placid." Michelle Picard not only is the Deputy Commissioner of the NWHL, but she previously played on the U.S. Olympic and women's national teams. Prioritizing the health and safety of the players, staff, and all involved, the National Women's Hockey League will play its sixth season in a centralized and protected environment. The competition will feature the NWHL's six teams being the Boston Pride, Buffalo Beauts, Connecticut Whale, Metropolitan Riveters, Minnesota Whitecaps, and first-year expansion club, the Toronto Six. Launched in 2015, the NWHL features more than 120 players, including stars from the NCAA Division I programs and players with national team experience from the US, Canada, and Europe. So, along this year, that also includes players from the CWHL/PWHPA. But other than that, let's keep on rolling as we have a lot to cover in the next 10 or so minutes. So let's go to the small business partners now. The Buffalo Beauts added a small business partner in Catherine Rose Floral Design. I touched on this briefly last week, but I will touch on this just a little more. If you're looking for floral boutiques and boutonnieres, please visit their website at catherinerosefloral.com. So if you want to join as a small business partner of the Buffalo Beauts, make sure to visit them at buttes.nwhl.zone/sponsors. So that being said, let's continue rolling along because we've got more. The Connecticut Whales added a small business partner in doghouse, daycare, and boarding. So with that one, what you're going to get out of that sponsorship, somebody called the Bahaman. We know who let the dogs out. Our newest small business partner, the Doghouse, is a state-of-the-art, cage-free daycare, boarding, and grooming facility conveniently located off Exit 2 in Danbury. Visit their website for more at doghousedaycareandboarding.com. So they are now a small business partner of the Connecticut Whale, but they're not the only one the Connecticut Whale have recently added. I will get into the other one in just a moment or two. But with that, we go back to the Buffalo Beauts, who added another small business partner. And so they are proud to announce that Wild Art Vinyl and Graphics and Detailing is an official small business partner of the Buffalo Beauts. So that being said, if you're looking for designs, wraps, or graphics, visit their website at wildart.com. Again, to be a Butte small business partner, please visit buttes.nwhl.zone/sponsors. So now, with that being said, we go back to the Connecticut Whale once again for another one of their small business partners recently added. They did this on December 17th. If you are looking for the perfect holiday gift for your favorite hockey player, check out our newest small business partner, Hudson Valley Hockey Company. Please visit their website at hudsonvalleyhockey.com. So, lots going on through the NWHL when you look at the lens of which this is all going. But let's kind of transition now from the small business partners to everything else that's happening across the National Women's Hockey League. So we're actually going to start with one more small business partner before we get wild and crazy with anything else. The Minnesota Whitecaps, I should say, are pleased to welcome back the Minnesota Lottery as an official sponsor of the Minnesota Whitecaps for the 2021 NWHL season in Lake Placid. And you can read more at minnesotawhitecaps.nwhl.zone. So that's actually what I'm going to do. So if you just give me a moment. As the NWHL gets set to play its sixth season later this month in Lake Placid, the Minnesota Lottery has announced its commitment to return as an official partner of the 2019 Isabel Cup champions, the Minnesota Whitecaps. In a statement from Adam Prock, who is the Lottery Executive Director, he said, "The Minnesota Lottery is proud to continue our support of women's professional hockey through our partnership with the Minnesota Whitecaps. We wish them, the Whitecaps, good luck as they prepare to start their new season." Among other activations, the lottery will be the title sponsor of the Minnesota Lottery Powerball Power Play during games this season. The Whitecaps are proud to welcome back the Minnesota Lottery for their second season of sponsoring Minnesota's women's professional hockey team, said Whitecaps Director of Marketing and Communications, Samantha Melius-Uren. Local sponsorship is crucial for the continued growth of the NWHL and all women's sports leagues, and the Minnesota Lottery continues to deliver genuine support. So the lottery has generated approximately $3.3 billion for programs that positively impact the lives of Minnesotans. More than $1.4 billion has helped preserve, restore, and protect Minnesota's environment through the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, Game and Fish Fund, and the Natural Resources Fund. Approximately $1.9 billion has helped fund state programs through the general fund, including education, public safety, and health and human services. So that being said, let's roll along because we've got just a little bit more. We're going to start with today's news, then we're going to get into some player stuff before we welcome on Ant Tokarski, who will join me for a season preview for season 6. So the New York Rangers announced today that they will be cheering on the Whale and Riveters in their protected environment at Herb Brooks Arena during the 2021 NWHL bubble season in Lake Placid. So the story from Erica Ayala, who is an NWHL voice for the Whale and the Pride, said, "Women hockey partners announced today that the New York Rangers of the National Hockey League will have 25 fan faces in the crowd for all Connecticut Whale and Metropolitan Riveters games during the NWHL 2021 season in Lake Placid." The W Hockey Partners press release reads, "In a display of support for the Connecticut Whale and the Metropolitan Riveters of the NWHL, the New York Rangers have arranged to have 25 fan faces featuring every member of their roster when the Whale and Riveters compete in the upcoming bubble NWHL season in Lake Placid." Original NWHL player and Whale captain Shannon Doyle, who has led several junior Rangers clinics over the last 2 years, said, "When we're competing for the Isabel Cup, seeing the faces of all the Rangers players in the stands at Herb Brooks Arena will have us fired up. This is an extraordinary gesture by the New York Rangers," added Riveters veteran forward Rebecca Russo. "As an organization, one of the Rangers' goals every year is to continue to grow the game of hockey at every level and for everyone," said David Hopkinson, who is the EVP Business Operations for MSG Sports. "Anytime we have a chance to make that happen, whether it is through creating access opportunities or generating exposure for this great game, we want to be involved." And then finally, from Amy H.E.R, the general manager of the Connecticut Whale, she said, "The New York Rangers have always been genuine advocates of hockey as a game for everyone. We appreciate their leadership and what they've done to cheer on our Connecticut Whale and the rest of the women in Lake Placid." Whale and Riveters fan faces continue to be available to order until January 15th at nwhl.zone/tickets and can be found in a most recent tweet today at NWHL on Twitter. So now that we've kind of gone through all of that, let's kind of go back a bit and let's touch on some player stuff, because that is where we find ourselves lying today. So I do have more player news I will put down on tomorrow's episode of Six and Sticks, again, right here on the Barn Burn TV network and ZingoTV channel 250 at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. But until then, we are going to note that, or I was going to note rather, that 9 players were expected to sign NWHL contracts within the last week or so. So now a couple of those players have signed, and that, as a result, leaves about 3 players still pondering their futures and expected to sign. So, we'll see what comes of that. So as a result, again, Toronto has made their signings. I will touch on those tomorrow. I'm not going to spend time touching on that much today. But what you can keep in mind is that the Minnesota Whitecaps, who have been looking at Anna Zumwinkel and Presley Norby, presumably are still set to sign. However, that being said, the Minnesota Whitecaps are still uncertain with Corin Bowie, who did sign for the upcoming season, as there is potential for her to opt out. As Dan Rice told me last week right here on the NWHL Cooldown, continue to look out for that. Again, a question would be, if she signed, why would she now opt out? Look, some of these people have jobs that they can't take time off of. Others are coaches. And so I believe Corin Bowie is a coach, if I did my research correctly. And so another question might be, now Maddie Rowe, who is a first-year Whitecap, is also a coach with the Minnesota-based school. What does that mean for her? Anyways, so for now, she's expected to sign. I've heard nothing on that front, just something to keep in mind there. Meanwhile, the WHL has a second player who is set to opt out, and that is Jordan Brickner, a veteran defender who will not join Connecticut for the season 6 bubble in Lake Placid. Now, Dan Rice reported this yesterday. She signed back on August 11th and was the league's 100th signing and the first for the month of August. She has been with the Whales since the league's inaugural season back in 2015-16, and last but not least, became the 21st player to sign with the Whale for the 2020-21 campaign. So, obviously a loss of a veteran presence on and off the ice for the Connecticut Whale, and certainly a shame. But with that being said, the Toronto Six have added a veteran presence within their roster, or should I say 2. Again, I will touch on those tomorrow on 6 and 6 right here on the Barn Burner TV network and ZINGOTV channel 250. But again, look for some last-minute additions to be done in the next couple of days. The Metropolitan Riveters have 2 signings coming up that were kind of peaked on one of the Riveters' most recent newsletters. As well, look out for some future Toronto 6 newsletters in which I may be contributing to. So just something to keep in mind open there. So if you're not following the Toronto 6 and you're not on the newsletter, get on it. So again, I will also boost that again tomorrow when it comes to the newsletter for or really just at all anything that regards the Toronto Six, as they continue their preparations for their bubble season in Lake Placid, a really exciting time for them as a first-year organization. But the Minnesota Whitecaps, they're no stranger to this. They know what that's like, and they're an Isabel Cup champion now. So we've seen what they can do, and now we're going to see what the Toronto Six can do. And again, I will try to have Sarah Steele even potentially tomorrow, as I touched on last week, hoping to book. We'll see where that goes. These players are busy, both work and hockey. It's not always easy, and that's just the reality of that. So any moment now, I'm expected to be joined by Ann Tokarski of the icegarden.com. She is a mind for women's hockey on her own, both NCAA and professional women's hockey, being the NWHL. Earlier on, she was a social contributor to the PWHPA during their commitment season. However, rosters again are done for that, and you'll hear more about that later on today on PWHPA Over the Glass, again right here on the Barn Burner TV network and ZINGOTV channel 250. Someone I'm excited to have on certainly is Ann Tokarski. She is a quality writer. She's an even better person. She put together a video a while back previewing the NWHL and giving those an idea of what to expect when it comes to this unique season. Originally, when she did the video, there was not knowledge of which that this would be a bubble, but Tyler Tumanian knocked that out of the park. And sure, the circumstances of COVID-19 have set us in a strange direction. But that being said, she has put together this video in great lengths. And speaking of the host of that video, please welcome to the NWHL Cooldown, it's Ann Tokarski. Ann, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course. Always happy to talk about the NWHL.
All right, let's get into it then, because we have so much to get into. I wanted to have you on today to do a season 6 season preview. And sure, these are, uncertain circumstances. Again, with the Lake Placid bubble, COVID-19 has ravaged just about everything. And so, we're hoping for somewhat of a normal women's hockey season. And what I really like about this is the platform that it gives women's hockey. So let's talk about that first, and that women's hockey, they were given a stage at Herb Brooks Arena to do this. And a couple of the things that I think really stand out to me, first off, is the NWHL print at center ice, I think is a huge thing. You don't see that in many of these NWHL arenas. And that's just kind of the reality of women's hockey and where we are right now. But as we continue to grow, this was a huge step. And not only that, but the NWHL was set to be the only hockey being played until the NHL kind of ruined that and made their plan to come back January 13th. But, so be it. So, why is that so significant for the women's game?
I think it's just huge in general because there's going to be so many more eyes on the women's game at this point in Lake Placid. And like you mentioned, with the logo on center ice, I think that's going to be so extremely cool to see, just as someone who's watching the regular season on Twitch and then the semifinals and the final on NBC. I think that's going to be really cool.
And NBC, I mean, this is huge. I mean, you look at Tyler Tuminia's work, and you have to applaud her. That could not have been particularly easy, again, just because, again, the standards of which women's hockey are right now continue to grow, but are still not where we'd like it. So I think that that's a really massive thing. No, it will not be the full season, but yes, it will be 3 games, and that will be the semifinals as well as the finals. So, let's take a look at Tyler Tumini's work. She came in, and this was at a time when the NWHL was already trying to separate itself and become independent owners with each team. And so 2 of those 6 teams are now within that range, and Danny Ryland continues to work on that. Meanwhile, Tyler Tumminia continues to work on other unique features of the NWHL, such as a TV deal, and really just about anything else that she can do from a creative lens. So, I don't know how much you've read into Tyler Tumminia's history, but she's someone who worked in baseball and did a lot of unique things. So what do you think that she can bring to a growing professional women's hockey league?
Well, I think she definitely brings a freshness, a different perspective that, Danny Ryan has been the commissioner for about 5 years since the league was born. And I think that Tuminia is just bringing a new perspective that I think the NWHL can really utilize. I think there was some discontent from outside organizations, outside people who weren't exactly thrilled with the direction Danny Ryan was taking the league. But I think with Tuminia stepping in and stepping into that commissioner role, whether it's interim or not, I think she's bringing an entirely new skill set to the league that I think is going to prove to be really valuable.
And so that really stands out to me. And of course, we're not going to be able to see all of this in a full-fledged motion, just given the bubble season. She did some really unique things while she was in baseball. She said there was blackout nights and all sorts of other weird and somewhat not appropriate or entirely appropriate things. So I'm not going to mention all of them, but yeah, again, she's looking for, creative ways to grow the sport. And I think that freshness that you mentioned is something that we're seeing in a huge way with this bubble, and giving these girls, the right platform, and, both literally and figuratively being NBC Sports as well as the actual ice itself at Herb Brooks Arena, and giving them that stage that they deserve. So I think there's going to be certainly quite the battle for this season. And that being said, let's get right into it. So again, we're continuing to see some players ponder if they should be taking part in this due to COVID risk and whatnot. But as it is, rosters are pretty much set. Again, Toronto signed 3 today. So rosters are certainly coming together. So why don't we start with Toronto? And I only ask you that, I mean, look, I'm based in Toronto. So, I'm loving this team. I love that they're here. I love that Digit Murphy is the head of this team. You couldn't have picked a better head coach and president. So let's start with Digit Murphy. What are your thoughts on her? I mean, look, she's, very empowering as a woman and someone who's trying to lead for, not only women in general, but women in sports and women in hockey. And I think that was kind of the biggest message sent when she joined the Toronto Six for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think Digit is such a great, not only a figurehead from the business perspective, but a real leader for the team on the ice. And I think there's no one they could have chosen to coach the team that would have embodied the spirit of the Six more so than Digit. So I'm definitely really excited to see her, leading the six on the ice and off as team president.
And this is the second expansion team in the NWHL now, so this is something they're no stranger to. And look, the Minnesota Whitecaps, understandably so, are Isabel Cup champions. Do you think that the Toronto Six have it in them?
I definitely think they have some surprises up their sleeves. I don't know if just yet I can say that they'll be going to the Cup final, but I think they definitely have a shot.
I think that's fair enough. So let's take a look at their roster now and take a look at some players that you may be familiar with, because I understand that you are also very much into NCAA women's hockey in addition to pro women's hockey. So you look at a couple of those names coming from the NCAA side. You look at Sarah Evcott-Godbout, Natalie Marcuzzi, Lindsay Eastwood, just to name a few, along with Amy Curlew, of course, who was a draft pick. So, what is it that you like about this roster?
I think this roster is really strong offensively. I think they have so much talent with Michaela Grant-Mentis, who we obviously saw last year a little bit with the Buttes. She played, I think, between 2 and 4 games with them during the playoffs and the end of the regular season. She was an absolute powerhouse. And I think as one of the first kind of collegiate players signed, this will be her first full professional season. I think she's one of the perfect players to build a roster around because, she's so dynamic. She's so skilled, as we saw with Buffalo. And then I think with the other players, Lindsay Eastwood is, again, a tremendous defender. We saw her with Syracuse. She can pretty much do no wrong on the ice. She's one of the most talented and skilled defenders I've seen play. And she's also criminally underrated, coming from a program like Syracuse that, hasn't really seen a lot of success recently outside of their, NCAA quarterfinals bid a couple of years back. But I think this roster has a lot of exciting names, a lot of exciting players, and I'm really looking forward to what they're bringing to Lake Placid.
I think it's going to be certainly a strong roster coming. And, you look at the veteran side now and you see names like Taylor Woods, Kristen Barbara, Shine Darkangelo, Elaine Chuli. Where does it end? I mean, this team, certainly have some strong names. So I look forward to seeing what they've got in store. Where would you rank them? I mean, and that might even be hard to say, but if you had to, do your pre-tournament, standings prediction, where would you put them?
I'd put them in third or fourth.
All right, I think that's fair. So that being said, let's now head down the 401 to the Buffalo Buttes, or at least in a normal season, I would say that. So let's go to the Buffalo Buttes now and take a look at their roster. But before we can take a look at their roster, again, I'm going to ask you this for each team. So, signing season is over and, we're now 2 weeks away from the tournament. How do you think Nate Oliver did in his first year as general manager?
Oh, he's done an incredible job. I can't believe what he's been able to pull together in such a short time. He took over from Mandy Cronin when the Toronto Six were announced as, an expansion franchise. And since then, he's been able to sign so many incredible players. I mean, I think of Kayla Menigan as one of the biggest names that he's signed in his offseason. And just being able to get her on an NWHL roster. I mean, we saw what she was capable of last season with Connecticut. And so I think she's a huge name that he was able to attract to Buffalo. And I think he's just done a phenomenal job, both with recruiting players onto the ice and with, you've seen so many small business partnerships that he's been able to put together. I think he's done an incredible job.
And that's something that really stands out to me. Again, we are in challenging times. And so if you can help out a partner, and seeing the vast number of which he's done that in the way that supports both the Buttes and those partners respectively, I think he's just done a tremendous job. And then his outreach as well has gone as far as Sweden, which surprised me because one of his first moves, I believe, was Dominique Kremer. And I'm excited to see what she does for this team. So let's take a look at some of the bigger names here. Again, obviously, a lot of these are returners. You look at, for example, Kelsey Newman. You look at Taylor Kersey, Aaron Guillen. I mean, I could go on, but I'm not going to. So that being said, Taylor Kersey is joined by her sister this season, Hunter Kersey from Brock University. Another U Sports name is Autumn McDougall. So they've got a lot of young talent. And then Jordan Duran, who was all but set to retire, has decided to return. Nate Oliver was able to just pull a string there and just kind of steer back in the direction of pro hockey. So, what do names like this say about this organization?
Well, I think the fact that they've been able to keep a handful of their players from last season, especially with, you know, they didn't have as successful of a season on the ice as they might have wanted last year, especially given Buffalo's unprecedented success in the past, you know, appearing in every Isabel Cup final for the first 4 years of the league. I think being able to attract some big names back to the team after maybe a not so stellar regular season and postseason last season. Sorry, I've said season so many times, but you know, I think that's a huge deal for them. And I think that really speaks to Nate Oliver's passion for this team and his vision for this team. So I think that it's just incredible what he's been able to do. And it's really exciting for Buttes fans to, you know, have those players returning and have those names on the ice.
And there's certainly a lot of familiarity, like you said. And then you see other names who have had some sort of, I don't want to say pro experience, only because this summer we saw the EWSHL, if I got that correct, play. And it, you know, I don't know if I'd call that pro, but a lot of pro names, or those who were set to play their first season, such as goaltender Caddy Flag, got to have some experience. So, you know, take it for what you will when I say the word pro, but I think that that certainly helps prepare, especially during these uncertain times. And the fact that, you know, the city of New Hampshire was able to, you know, allow for play to happen at all. I think that was a really big thing.
I agree. And there were so many collegiate players playing in that league over the summer too. So, you know, there's a really high level of competition with all the talent that they were able to attract.
Absolutely. So that being said, let's move on to team number 3. I think we're going to go with the Connecticut Whale. Now, the Connecticut Whale have had a little bit of a shakeup this season. Again, it is the second year for head coach Colton Orr, but more so behind that in the front office, we see that Bray Ketchum-Peel has decided to take a full-time job. And so as a result, Danny Ryland brought in Amy H.E.R over the summer to take over as general manager. So your first impressions of someone who has been around, you know, sports in both men's and women's for many years?
Well, I actually got the chance to talk to Amy H.E.R a while ago for the Ice Garden, and that was just talking to her was so incredible because you can already tell that she has a passion for sports and she knows what she's doing. That she worked with the WNBA, she worked with the NHL, she knows sports, both men's and women's, and I think having that experience and bringing that experience to the Whale is going to be game changing for them. So I'm really excited to see what her involvement and her leadership can do for the team.
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge. So now let's take a look at their roster. And as I look at this roster, I actually see some unannounced names on this roster, which is really interesting. And I had just said before I had you on that Anna Zoomwinkle is a name the Whitecaps were looking at, and yet I'm surprised to see she's on the Whale roster. So a little bit of surprise as we go into this roster, but anyways, we'll get into that before we wrap on the Whale. So now we see a couple of familiar names such as Taylor Martin, Casey Anderson, Emma Vlasic, you know, and again, they're kind of like the Buffalo Buttes in that they've got a lot of, you know, the same names, but what they did do was sign a lot of draft picks through the summer en route to what is going to be an interesting bubble season, to say the least. And so how does that, you know, boost of youth help the Whale, especially after a season where they finished last?
I think the youth are really going to revitalize the Whale this season, just because in the past we haven't seen a lot of new players come to the Whale. It's been a lot of players who played for other franchises in the league coming to the Whale and getting a new fresh start there. So I think the fact that they were able to attract so much young talent really says a lot about where the franchise is going, and you know, the culture that they've established in the locker room and just the overall feel for the team that, you know, they're putting out into the league. I think that says so much about them, that they were able to sign players like Nicole Gagliardo, Abby Ives, you know, all those names from the NCAA. I think that's really impressive.
And another one to note is Amanda Conway from Norwich University. So I think that's just, you know, a lot of strength here. Then again, you look at some other veteran names. Again, I failed to mention Janine Weber, who also has national team experience. And so, you know, her, you know, vast experience in women's hockey only helps the Connecticut Whale here. Meanwhile, you know, there are other names here as more so backups. Again, when you look at Mariah Fujimagari, hope it said that correctly, as their third goaltender should needs be. But again, you've got the strong roster, Grace Kleinback, a returning name, Caitlin Russ, Elena Orlando. So then there's Shannon Doyle, who's set to play in her last season. So do you want to, you know, talk a little bit about Shannon Doyle, only because you're a little more familiar with the NWHL than I've been. I haven't really had so much the pleasure of watching her as perhaps you did. And so as we enter her last season, being season 6, you know, why has she been such, you know, a figure to this organization?
Well, Shannon Doyle, she's so versatile, I would say. She's obviously a huge playmaking defender. She's done so much for the Whale. And I think she's also like a great locker room character and a great leader. As we saw, she was named captain. She's been captain for at least the past 2 seasons. And I think that just speaks volumes about who she is, not just as a player, but who she is outside off the ice. And on the ice, she's a force to be reckoned with. She had her campaign last season, her blocks for books, where for every block she made on the regular season, she would donate a book to, I believe it was local schools that were in need of, books. And I think that was really impressive because, over the course of the season, she racked up so many blocks and it was so many books donated. So I think that was really cool and also is a testament to who she is on and off the ice.
Right, and community is such a huge aspect of, you know, both women's hockey and what I've seen from junior hockey, at least here in Ontario. And the NHL, they try and do their part. Maybe it's not as obvious, but I think that really speaks volumes about Shannon Doyle. So thank you for your insight on her. And so I guess last but not least, again, like I said before we wrap up, I'll ask you a couple more questions. All right, so let's take a look at some NCAA names. And so one of those includes Tori Howren. Again, hoping I said that right. So what do you like about a player like that?
I also think she's incredibly versatile. I mean, there are definitely people who follow UNH a little more closely than I have. I know Spencer Fashetta is a huge New Hampshire fan, but he has such high praise for Tori. He thinks she's one of the best defenders out there, and I can't help but agree. I mean, just looking at her play from the past 4 seasons, she's really been a standout for UNH, but she's also underrated, which I think will take a lot of the other teams by surprise and might, give the Whale an advantage just as to use her as their secret weapon, I guess. So I think she's definitely going to be making a name for herself in this league as, Lake Placid and beyond, even when we go into the next few seasons.
I couldn't agree more. I think that she's going to be a key piece to an organization that continues to grow. So with that being said, again, new names to this organization appear to be Anna Zumikal and Aaron O'Neill. Something to look out for, press release perhaps in the coming days. And the Riveters have some stuff up their sleeve too. And so with that being said, I will go into the Riveters. But before I do that, where's your prediction for Connecticut this season, given their new boost of youth talent?
I would say 4 or 5. I don't have them as, skyrocketing to the top of the standings just quite yet. But I definitely do think they might have that edge to slip into the playoffs, into the semifinals. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do, but I wouldn't put them at like too high, I guess.
Let me ask you this before we move on. I'm going to try and word this carefully. When a team gets a new head coach, there's obviously this new chemistry that has to happen. And last year that was Colton Orr, former NHL enforcer. And, by no means of blaming the coach. I mean, do you think that that's perhaps why that there was a disconnect that led to a not successful season?
Honestly, it could have been, but from what I saw, the Whale had more success last year than they have in the past. So obviously discounting that first season where they were probably at their best, I would say even though they might not have won a lot of games last year, I would say they definitely still had success. Their systems improved, and I think a lot of that could be attributed to Colton Orr's influence. But like you said, there's always that adjustment period where a team has to get used to a new coach and has to get used to the systems of a new coach. So whether that happened over the course of the last season or if that's been happening since practices have resumed, I'm pretty optimistic that the Whale might have, something up their sleeve with Colton Orr involved this season.
I mean, honestly, I think it was a strong move, and I'm no one to say, it was, again, a chemistry disconnect. And again, like you said, the systems improved. So it's not like something good didn't come out of it. So, I mean, here's hoping for a stronger season. I think those draft picks will really help. So that being said, let's move on to the Metropolitan Riveters now. There was actually some news this morning, and maybe I'll get your take on that news first, is that for Riveters and Whale games, there will be some New York Ranger faces in the crowd by way of cardboard, not actually human. Again, this is a protected environment. So What does it mean to see that the NHL is supporting the NWHL? And not only that, because they're also supporting them financially, which we know as a result of the CWHL having to collapse. But seeing that the New York Rangers have hosted clinics of women's hockey, they've had some players in for different clinics and whatnot. What does that say about the partnerships that they're still in a way trying to again impose on the NWHL to help grow the women's game?
Well, I wouldn't say that these partnerships are really end all be all, I guess. Like, I think they're really cool that they're happening, but I also think the NWHL could thrive without them. But that being said, I think it's awesome that, the Rangers have decided to step up and support not just one team, but two. I think that's going to be really cool to see, Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin in the crowd at her Brooks Arena in Lake Placid. I think that's going to be cool both for Riveters and Whale fans and for fans of the NHL who might be tuning in for the first time.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be special for the players. I mean, again, they're not actually humans, but they're cardboard, and I think that some of the players, such as Shannon Doyle, who spoke about it, as well as Rebecca Russo and GM Amy Shear, it's recognizing that it's something. And yeah, like you said, the NWHL is the ability to thrive without the NHL, but certainly something nonetheless. So let's get into the actual roster now, because this roster has seen some interesting, I think I'll use the word shakeups this season. We're seeing the return of Rebecca Russo. We're seeing Kelly Babstock, who was traded from Toronto to the Riveters, just given COVID-19 just wasn't going to make, being in Canada really all that possible for her. Then you see a little bit of youth talent brought in, not a whole lot. Then you see other names like Emily Janiga, Sammy Colorat, which have experience in different places, in other places of pro. And then some new names such as Soraya Tinker, Bridget Prentice, Tara Hoffman, and then Sonia Shelley, who comes from the Connecticut Whales. So do you want to talk about this roster?
Yeah, for sure. So I think what first stands out to me is that their blue line is really young. They have three defenders returning. It's Rebecca Morse, Kira Dostal-Arena, and Layla Kilduff. And only two of those can really be considered true veterans because last year was Kilduff's first season in the league. And that's a little worrisome to me. I mean, it makes sense, but Dostal-Arena and Morris are two really strong veteran defenders, but I guess I'm still just a little worried about, what that's going to mean for the Riveters this season, especially because in net, they have two pretty young goaltenders. So I'm just hoping that things work out for them and they're not too overwhelmed, especially because Sam Walther isn't coming back from last season's roster. I'm a little worried, but it's the Riveters, and they're known for having grit and they're known for being strong. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them, pull off something great, but my expectations aren't high going into this season for them.
I think that's reasonable. Now let's talk about the coaching staff that they have, because they're bringing in Ashley Johnston, who is a familiar name to Riveters fans, former player, now coming coach, and will help head coach Ivo Mocek. And so, Ivo Mocek was able to ice a reasonably decent team this past season, to say the very least. And now it has Ashley Johnston's help. Does that help to impact and perhaps change your expectations at all?
I would say that definitely improves my expectations and raises them a little bit, just because we know the success Ashley Johnston has had on the ice. And I think moving her behind the bench is going to be a terrific move for, the Riveters that have been around and have played with her, and the new faces. She's pretty much a legend in this league, and having her behind the bench is going to be pretty significant for both the young and the older players.
Absolutely. So something that stands out on this roster, again, when you look at the talent of, for example, Rebecca Morse, Kendall Cornine, Madison Packer, you also see names such as Kaylee Hutchison, her second season of pro, Brooke Avery from Syracuse, who will be facing both Lindsay Eastwood and now Megan Quinn. Just as a preview to those who'll be watching Six and Sticks tomorrow, I think that Syracuse rivalry will be something really special. And again, we know that Lindsay Eastwood and Brooke Avery have been hosting a new show together called Teed Up when they're off the ice. So, that rivalry, I'm interested to see how that shows on the ice, especially for Lindsay Eastwood going into her first pro season. So, when we talk rivalries, we could talk player rivalries, team rivalries. Who do you think is going to be the biggest rival this season before we get into the rest?
I would say Buffalo and Toronto, or or Toronto and Boston, because I think those teams, those cities just have so much animosity towards each other, just in general, whether it's from the NHL or just, in general, I guess. But I also think, as you mentioned earlier, Buffalo and Toronto have that proximity during what would be a regular season. They're close enough that they would see each other pretty often. And I think that might spill over into the bubble. I don't know. I don't know. I think there might be some animosity there.
Yeah, it's really hard to say because these are not only uncertain times, and in that there was a need for a bubble this season, but let alone the fact that there's only 5 games this season in the regular portion, and then there's kind of this playing round going into the Isabel Cup playoffs. So let's talk about that format for a minute, because that doesn't allow for a whole lot of time for teams to get their feet under them. But that being said, players have had really quite a lot of time now to practice with their own teams at their own home ices, despite COVID measures and whatever. They've been able to make it work. Sure, teams haven't been fully together throughout those periods, but it's been enough that they've been able to, get some action under them. Do you think that the roster splits, given these, lockdown and just COVID measures, again, depending on where you are, do you think that's going to play an effect on how this season comes out?
I definitely think it will a little bit because, there are places where a team might not be able to practice with the full team, where it's only been groups of 6 or 8 or however many players. And I think not having the capability to practice with the full team probably until like all the teams are in Lake Placid, I think that's definitely not going to have the best effect on the teams going into the bubble. But I have confidence and I have faith in the professionalism of these players and their adaptability to be able to get their systems down really fast. And I'm optimistic that it's going to be some good hockey. So I wouldn't say that, the restrictions have super negatively impacted the teams, but I will say they probably have at some level.
Yeah, I'll say that from the experience of which Toronto, obviously, I know that they've been not only having to, for example, they've been doing weight training outdoors in the freezing cold because, Canada. And then, let alone the fact that the measures have been so bad here, just because the numbers as winter approached just kind of got out of hand. And so Toronto only had what I believe was 8 players and 2 coaches. And that was really a cause for shakeup. And so it's been challenging. They've only gotten one full skate, and as Digit told me, it wasn't even a full skate. Some players were still missing. So again, certainly some challenges, but here's hoping that the systems are down enough to kind of overcome some of that. But again, time will tell as we approach Lake Placid. So that being said, let's head on to another team, and this is team 5 out of 6, and this one is the Boston Pride. And the Boston Pride, as we know, are champions. That's just naturally how it is. They are the second privately owned team, or well, really they were the first, but if you count Toronto, I'm going to do it that way. In the NWHL, again, they are champions. They are fighters. They were supposed to be in the Isabel Cup final against the Minnesota Whitecaps before COVID knocked that away. So this roster hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, we see a couple new names, Taylor Turnquist being one of them, but overall, not a whole lot has changed. Sammy Davis, first round draft pick overall, and she is, just incredible. I've taken a look at her myself through video, and I love what I see. So other than that, I think Paige Capistran and Carly Turner are the only other new names to this roster. So not a whole lot of shakeup than, again, with Megan Rickard. So again, not a whole lot to change, but any hutch that maybe Boston is able to pull off again and get to the final?
Oh, I would not be surprised if that happened at all. I mean, like you mentioned, they're returning so many players and so many key pieces. So it'd be one thing if they were returning players who, didn't really produce last year, but they're not. They're returning the majority of their top lines and their top defensive pairings. And I think that's huge. In addition, they're returning their 2 goalies, Victoria Hansen and Lovisa Solander. And I just think in combination, this team is going to be one of the most unstoppable teams in Lake Placid. And I would not be surprised if they became the first repeat Isabel Cup champions this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that they're champions, and I can't see this going any other way. I mean, you look at this stacked roster: Jenna Rolt, McKenna Brand, Lexi Lang, Jillian Dempsey, Kelly Fratkin. You could go on and on. Christina Putinia. So that being said, I guess I'm not even going to ask you. I'm just going to assume that you're going to put them in first place in your figurative standings.
First or second, yeah. I mean, I think there's a chance the Whitecaps might be able to sneak first out from under them, but there's no way they fall to third.
Yeah, I would have very hard time believing that they fall to third, given their strength. So look for them to be back in at least the semifinals, if not the finals. I think that's more than fair to say. So that being said, let's move on to the last team, and that is the Minnesota Whitecaps as we continue moving forward right here on the Barn Burner TV Network and ZINGOTV channel 250. Again, I'm with Ann Tokarski this afternoon from the icegarden.com. So that being said, we take a look at the Whitecaps roster now, and again, Ali Dunstrom, leader of the pack, Amanda Levier, just two of the most standout names, and Ali Morse. So this roster hasn't seen a whole lot of change. John and Curtis, another name, but they did bring in Corin Bowie, Maddie Rowe, among just a couple of others. So what does that say about this organization?
I think this organization has the potential to continue to be really successful as they've been in the past. They've been an organization, they've been a team since, I believe, 2004. They just have only started competing in the NWHL during the 2018-2019 season. And so many of the names that were on that original Whitecaps roster are still playing, with Winnie Brott Brown, Chelsea Brott Rosenthal. There are so many players there who have so much history with the Whitecaps. And I think even with the new players, I think there's so much history there. You mentioned Maddie Rowe and Haley Mack, both coming from, the WCHA and the NCAA. So I think there's a lot of talent there, and they have a lot of potential to make a big splash this season.
Another new name to this roster is Sarah Bustad, or at least I believe that is the case. And I think that, look, you see a lot of star power, to say the very least. Then Audra Richards, another familiar name. I mean, there's, again, like I said, a lot of familiar names here, very little changed. And I mean, I think that speaks to the abilities of their head coach Jack Brott to put together a really strong roster, and someone who is known for doing so since they joined the NWHL. So where do you expect them to land? And could we see a potential for that final that should have been to be once again?
Yeah, I definitely think I have the Whitecaps anywhere between first and third place. There might be a surprise team sneaking into second place with the Boston Pride in first, but I think they definitely have the potential to return to that final that should have been last year. I think a Boston-Minnesota matchup could be in the cards again this season.
So let's talk about yourself this season. You are a contributor to the icegarden.com. So what is your focus for this season going to be?
This season, I'll be focusing on the Riveters. I'm essentially their beat reporter for this season, covering pregame, postgame, previews, doing that sort of thing, maybe some live tweeting too. And I'm really excited. I think this is a great Riveters team, and I'm looking forward to not only supporting them, but also writing about them and following their season.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to overall with this NWHL season. I think Tyler Tumminia has made this, a really exciting season in lieu of what, again, has presented its challenges due to COVID-19. So I think we're certainly in for a great season, to say the very least. And I look forward to following your work, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So that was Ann Tokarski from the icegarden.com. And before you leave, where can you be found on social media?
On Twitter, you can find me at Ann Tokarski, just my first and last name. And that's pretty much the only place I'm on. So follow along for some great coverage.
So that's where you can find Ann Tokarski. Her work is excellent. And, from PWPA socials to Ice Garden work, she is someone who is full of knowledge and, will provide that insight for the Riveters this season. And thank you again.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So All right, let's move on with the rest of the NWHL cooldown. Again, that was Andy Karski from the icegarden.com, who will be providing coverage along with this NWHL sixth season. There's not really a whole lot else going on in the National Women's Hockey League other than the Toronto signings, which I will get into tomorrow. So I will leave that as a surprise for tomorrow on Six and Sticks, which happens at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here at the Barn Burner TV network and ZINGOTV channel 250. So again, now that you've heard from Dan Rice and Andy Karski, the last one to knock off the wall, and hopefully I'm going to be able to book, is Erica Ayala, a voice for the Boston Pride and the Metropolitan Riveters, or at least I believe it's Metropolitan Riveters. And last night, Tyler Tumminia was on and NWHL Open Ice, and that was with Gamer Doc, as well as a member of the Buffalo Beauts, which I believe was Dominique Kremer. So look, point being, with the NWHL, there's been a lot of animosity in the past, but point being, they're trying to, I guess, rewrite that and get the exposure that pro women's hockey rightfully deserves. And so seeing that, now they've got Blade Tech Hockey, they've got, Rocket Sport, Hyper Ice, Duncan, again, a long-term sponsor for them, among other things. I just think that speaks so highly of, what this league has been able to accomplish. And sure, it didn't all work out with Danny Ryland in the role of commissioner, but she's at the same time trying to not fix some of that, but enhance that in the way of which that now there's, the private ownership, and there's, I'm going to say this lightly, that there's word/rumor that the Riveters might be the latest one to have private ownership. Again, I've got nothing on that. This is just a speculative discussion. Should I have more, I will come back next week with that information. But as we head towards the bubble, I've got to think that might be held off the books until the off season that comes, which again will be an extended one heading into October, when things are hopefully normal enough to have a proper and healthy season 7 for the National Women's Hockey League. So we'll see where that takes us. But, with 3 minutes left, make sure you're keeping your eyes on NWHL socials at nwhl.zone on Facebook and Instagram, and at NWHL on Twitter for your latest. And then, again, a great website to keep your eye on is thepuckauthority.com. I will be doing Toronto 6 coverage pre and post game with press conferences with players, and then again with some potential newsletter stuff in the works. Something to ponder, I think is the right word I'll use. And then again, some exclusive other work as it pertains to the league, not only with the Toronto 6, again, the team I will be laying my focus on, as I have pretty much since their installment into the National Women's Hockey League. But with that being said, we spoke, Ann and I, about the Buffalo Beauts and about the strength of Nathaniel Oliver and what he's done this year. And Dominique Kremer from Sweden was his first signing upon being named general manager, replacing Mandy Cronin, who joined the Toronto 6. And so that being said, the last thing I am going to mention is that Dominique Kremer actually spoke very highly of him yesterday on Twitch, saying, "I couldn't imagine the Beauts organization without him." And I think that really says a lot. And I think that players such as Taylor Kersey would happen to agree. Someone who's been long-term with the organization. And then there is insight on NWHL Twitter about Michelle Picard talking about the all-female officiating crew being provided by USA Hockey. Also spoke about her excitement for the upcoming season in Lake Placid. She was a last-minute replacement for Tyler Tumminia on Open Ice. So it's certainly a lot to listen to there. But make sure you are following along with the NWHL bubble season again, which can be seen on the NWHL Twitch page. They have 2 channels at twitch.tv/NWHL and /NWHL2. So season previews are coming. I will have a preview of the Toronto 6 at Over the Line Sports later this week. That should be Friday. But other than that, follow along for, like I said, Toronto 6 insight and interviews. Might have a commissioner chat in the books. But other than that, there is some insight from Yale University about their partnership for saliva-based COVID-19 testing through their pathology lab. So just a lot to look at and a lot to be pleased about, and a story about Mallory Suliotis using her platform, and that can be found again at theIceGarden.com with unique stories to follow from Toronto Six players at thepuckauthority.com. So, we are 19 days away from the bubble season, and I hope you enjoy it. I know I will, and I know that the players and the staff will as well. So that does it for this episode of the NWHL Cooldown right here on the Barn Burner TV Network and ZingoTV channel 250. Make sure you are following me on Twitter at Jocelyn Levine HBS and on Twitter at Puck Authority 1. And then you can follow my shows right here at Barn Burner Net on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I am back again tomorrow for the OHL Experience and Six and Sticks, talking about the newest organization in the National Women's Hockey League, the Toronto Six. My name is Justin Levine from the NWHL Cooldown, signing off.